The other thing about real estate I didn't like as an agent is it just felt very isolating.
Yeah.
I wasn't around people that I really meshed with. I couldn't find that team feeling. Today on the podcast, we're going to do something a little bit different. I sat down with a buddy of mine who's been in the industry for a long time, and we talked about a little bit more about me and about the company, about Amherst Madison, why I started a brokerage, where the industry is headed, how to be successful as an agent, where a lot of agents fall short and struggle, why a lot of brokerages and companies in general in the industry struggle versus thrive. And we just kind of had a really good conversation about the origins of my career as an entrepreneur, of the company, and of the state of the industry, and also where things are headed, as much as anyone can ever figure that part out. So with no further ado, enjoy this conversation about real estate, about me, and about Amherst Madison.
I don't know. I was just sitting here thinking, I'm picturing growing up as a kid. You're like, whatever, in sixth grade, and the teacher's asking everybody, what do you want to be when you grow up? And there's people say, hey, I want to play pro football. I want to play pro baseball. I want to be a rock star. I don't remember anybody saying, I want to grow up and run a real estate brokerage. So it kind of is like,
the truth.
Nobody ever says that growing up, and then here we are.
A lot of people don't even know what it is.
They don't.
I didn't, previous to getting into real estate. And I always say the same thing, and you've heard me say that same joke to agents at their school about just getting your license in the first place. People don't lay in bed at night when they're a kid and stare up at the ceiling necessarily and think, man, I want to sell some real estate.
Yeah.
So it's something that you get into. It's something that kind of gets in your blood. And obviously, if you have, parents that are in real estate or parents that are agents, that's different. Now you know what it's all about, and you either love it or you hate it, based on that, I think. And I think real estate tends to be a love-hate sport. Football was kind of a love-hate sport too. Maybe that's why I like real estate so much.
Because you're a masochist for pain.
I guess, it comes with the territory of being an entrepreneur, and being in sales. In real estate, it's pretty unique because it combines both of those things. You're an entrepreneur, you're self-employed, but you're also selling for a living. So, brokerage ownership for me, it was a path that I didn't expect, but it kind of combined. I was in real estate, I was selling real estate, having some success at it, and then I the entrepreneurial side of me looked at the brokerage world, and I wasn't finding something that I wanted. And like most entrepreneurs, we're all kind of self-serving in the ventures that we start. It's like we see a gap or a void in the marketplace for something that we want. And then the question just kind of becomes, well, is this something other people want too? And can I kill two birds with one stone and go create something that I want to be a part of? And then maybe enough other people want to be a part of it that I can quit my day job and just do that.
Yeah.
And it's kind of how the brokerage thing happened for me is I was valuing, professionalism as an agent and client representation and quality and education and learning and technology, and then I started kind of going to my peers and my brokerage and saying, like, how can you guys help me with this stuff? And they couldn't. And quite frankly, nobody was really interested in even having that conversation. And so I'll just create my own.
Yeah. So you saw a big gap in the industry, lack of professionalism, because let's face it, there's kind of a low bar of being able to get into real estate, and that's exposed a lot of times. And you didn't see that level of excellence out there, and you wanted to create a place of excellence that agents like yourself could,
Yeah, and have a team also that was. I came from a team background. I was a firefighter, and I was a football player, and I was in construction, and all those things are you got to work together, and sometimes even it's a matter of life and death in the fire service, or framing a house if you're counting on somebody to hold on to something, or else you're going to get crushed. Then they got to do their job, And I was used to working in these environments where groups of people were working together, and especially in team sports as well. I just interviewed Jeremiah Dickey, and it's always such a reminder of the role that a team plays in my life and how important it is to me. And that was the other thing about real estate I didn't like as an agent, is it just felt very isolating.
Yeah.
I wasn't around people that I really meshed with. I couldn't find that team feeling, or even something that was a shadow of what I remembered in the fire service and being involved in athletics. So yeah, that was a big part of it for me too, was like, I wanted to create a culture. I wanted to create a team. I wanted to create an environment that people that were like me could plug into and feel like they belonged.
Yeah, real estate can be a lonely business. For real estate agents, it can be a very lonely business, and it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
It shouldn't have to be. And so you're building a team to where these people can get the help and support.
Why do you think that is? Like I've said that so many times, that it's a lonely business. It can be. Just spitballing here. It's like, why do you think that it is? Or can be? I have my ideas. I'm curious what yours are.
Initially, I want to say ego. I think everybody wants to look good and be right.
Yeah.
And everybody wants to look good and be right. It's like, if I ask for help, then maybe I'm just exposing that I don't know how to do this. I don't know that area. And I think people they need to ask for help more often, right? And I think one of your best strengths is knowing your weaknesses.
Yeah.
Right? Here's my weakness, but be comfortable and confident enough, and put yourself in an environment to where you feel comfortable asking for that help, right? Because one of the greatest determining factors of your success is the environment you put yourself in.
Yeah.
Right? So you need to put yourself in an environment where not only is the knowledge there, but you feel comfortable enough to ask for that knowledge, and you trust those other people. Like we talked about, trust is you trust the knowledge that's being given, and you feel comfortable enough to ask for help or help others even. It
sounds crazy to say, but even acknowledging that you need to be surrounded by like-minded people, like even to say that takes some degree of humility. And I've seen agents struggle with that. Like they have this wall put up that they've built of perfection and invincibility and individualism, and they don't need anyone, and they have all the answers, and they've built that wall up so high that they become trapped by it. Mm-hmm. And it's a shame in so many ways, because I see people go through brutal personal battles and life-altering sickness and divorce and depression and alcoholism and you name it, because they're so isolated. And yeah, it's funny you say, and I think you're 100% correct, that ego plays a huge role in this. And then people build up these ego walls in our industry, and they become trapped by them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, people think about leaders, they think of words like, courage and strength and stuff like that, but another word is vulnerability. I don't know, I'm not going to tie into a leader that doesn't show some sort of vulnerability, because to me, that leader is fake, right? And that's one thing I'll just say. I just really appreciated working with you. You and I worked for months before I officially came on, and I got to see all the aspects. And you were vulnerable, and you had that humility, which told me you were a real leader, not just a paper leader. Like a lot of times you'll see people up on stage and they're talking about how great they are and the picture of their house and the boat and the car and stuff like that. It's just so old school. It's old school. You show me someone who's vulnerable. You're showing me someone who really cares.
Yeah.
And it's about, the broker is about caring about these agents. When you're a solo agent, you can kind of keep your head down, focus on yourself. But, when you run a brokerage, it's about doing something greater than yourself, and something big.
I appreciate that. And I would say that I'm the same way. You want to make sure you're partnering with people that you know who they are, and that you're getting the real them and the real version of them, and that you're not going to get surprised 6 months down the road or 6 years from down the road of, oh, I thought I knew who this person is, but I really don't. Now I'm finding out the hard way, And so, yeah, that authenticity is important. It's like, does it pass the sniff test? And we, in our positions, we interview a lot of agents, we talk to a lot of agents, we hire staff, and sometimes you do have to make it a gut instinct decision on somebody. But I think also that it's not as much of just a gut instinct as sometimes we think. I mean, there's things people are doing or more likely not doing that are informing that, where we feel like, hey, this is somebody I can trust, or no, there's something wrong here, and I don't necessarily know what it is, but I think a lot of times what it is that we're sensing a lack of authenticity, and so that I would totally agree with you. And when I look back at, who I've partnered with or who I've hired or not hired or brought on or not brought on, man, the times I didn't trust that instinct, I regretted it. And that's one thing I would say that I suffer from sometimes is overthinking things instead of just going with whatever my instinct is. More often than not, my instincts are accurate, and they're there for a reason. And I think all of us need to trust them more.
I think when you're working with other people, there's three different things. There's like clarity, and there's skill, and there's drive. And if, like, say we have people working for us, if the clarity's not there, that's on us as leaders. So it's our job to help give them that clarity. And when it comes to skill, it's like, what can you do to get better, and what can we do to help you get better? And then that last one is drive. And I guess I'll throw the ego word on myself, to where before, if someone's drive was at like a 5, my head was like, hey, you're a coach and a motivational guy. You can take a 5 to a 10. And what I learned was you can't.
Yeah.
Right? You can give people more clarity, more skill. But that drive, I think you can move someone up 1 or 2 points, and that's it. And that was my ego thinking you can take a 5 to a 10. And sometimes at 5, it's there. It's a red flag. And, we love on them so much. We want to help them so much, but we can't want it more than they do. Maybe you ever come across just someone that they were kind of stuck, kind of in that downtrodden, and you're pushing, you're educating, you're training, but you can't want it more than they do.
Yeah.
Right? They have to have that.
I laugh because this dynamic, almost drove me out of coaching and drove me out of wanting to own a brokerage and drove me out of this whole broker leadership coaching world. Like it almost broke me several times. It took me a long time to get to the point of like what you just said. And the way that I've always said is you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And
so you got to give them a salt lick.
You got to give them salt lick. It's one of the keys to survival in business, I think, is like being able to let go of negativity and let go of negative things and focus on the positive. But sometimes it makes it hard to reflect on some of the struggles you went through because it's like your brain is like, no, I forgot that for a reason. I don't want you to start thinking about it. But Derek, I can't tell you how many times I wanted to throw in the towel on growing and running a brokerage because of what you're talking about, because I did want it more than them, because I was beating my head against the wall with some agents of, man, you're so close. Like, if you would just try 10% harder, you would break through the other side and start building, not just making an income, but building generational wealth for your family. Or I would look at them and say, if you would just add in these 2 or 3 different, prospecting strategies, or if you would just like get a little bit more organized with your CRM and your conversion technique and your conversion system, you would be able to quit your day job and go full time in this business and be an entrepreneur and do what you really want to do. And time after time after time after time after time after time, they wouldn't. And it was absolutely freaking maddening. And it still is to this day if I allow it to be. I've had to figure out a space where I'm there and I'm present and I'm trying and I'm available when they have questions and I'm showing up to the things that I committed to show up to, but I don't want it more than they do, and that's a delicate balance to try to find. It really is. And I know that you feel that because I know you've had that battle in your own career.
So I want to talk about, a lot of times entrepreneurs are excited. They want to start a new business, and they'll see a podcast or they have a book or here's this plan, and they create this business plan about this business. And then I got a perfect business plan and I'm just going to do it from now and forever. Well, when you start a brokerage, you don't have the same plan year after year over and over again, right? There are all these changes, right? COVID, threw everybody for a loop. There's market changes. We might have a bigger shift into new construction, or agents are looking for different support and tools. And there's lots of these big changes. So, you've been doing this, I believe, for like 13 plus years. What are some of the major changes when it comes to real estate brokerages today than over a decade ago? What are some of the big changes that happened, and how did you deal with it?
Well, the only constant in life is change, and we are in an industry that moves fast in a lot of ways, and it's an industry that is on the map in terms of Wall Street money and in terms of even international finance. And when I started the brokerage in 2013, and especially the decade prior to that, I don't know, real estate brokerage just wasn't on some of those radars like it is now. I mean, it wasn't on the tech radar, really until after the crash and kind of growing again after 2010, 2011. And then all these prop tech companies kind of started springing up in 2015, 2018, 2020, especially now, and that's been interesting because, prop tech and CRM technology and CMA technology and marketing technology and photography and videography. And now, of course, AI and everything that's doing to it, and the role that social media plays in marketing real estate and marketing real estate agents' business. As all these tech companies popped up, well, now, there's all this Silicon Valley money and Wall Street money that loves tech. And so now all of that started pouring into the real estate space. And that was kind of one huge shift that we went through. And that sort of led to companies, looking at a real estate brokerage as a venue or an avenue to get access to deal flow for their tech tools. And then that starts spinning into, access to deal flow for, and this is something that existed long before technology, title and escrow services or lending services. And what happens is, these companies are spawned on Wall Street, really, through mergers and acquisitions. And they're real estate companies, but they're not the same real estate companies of 2020 or 1990 or even 2010, because their model is not dependent upon the real estate agent succeeding as a real estate agent. Their model is not dependent on selling real estate. And people, it's a little bit hard to even explain sometimes to people, what do you mean a real estate company that doesn't depend on selling real estate? They really don't. And in fact, a lot of them make zero money on a real estate transaction. They make money because they're selling their prop tech, or they're selling title and escrow services, or they're selling their lending services. And, the brokerage is just kind of an avenue to get access to that deal flow. And that's something that, when I started the brokerage, there was kind of rumors of that type of business model. And then, 5 or 6 years later, you started to kind of see it in some bigger markets. And now it's everywhere. And there are models that we're competing with that are structured that way in our market today, every single day. And so it makes it more and more challenging and dynamic when you are an independent company, you're a smaller company, you're sincerely there to help agents become successful. You really are in a partnership with them in terms of, if they're not successful, you're not successful, because you're all rowing in the same direction, hopefully. But you're at financially, you're at a competitive disadvantage, competing against companies that are levered to the extent that some of these are. So that's a long answer, but that dynamic has really shifted everything in our industry. Mm-hmm. And more of it, it's shifted the mentality of operators away from, hey, how do we, bring John in or bring Jane in and help them become more successful, and they're going to sell more real estate, and then the brokerage is going to be more profitable and healthier, and then they're going to spread the word and bring in other agents. It is not that simple anymore. So
what do you feel is going to change 5 years from now?
I don't see this dynamic shifting. I see it going in the same direction. I think that operators that want to survive and they want to have healthy, thriving companies, they have to figure out different ways to add ancillary services, to add ancillary revenue, or they have to grow their brokerages dramatically to compete with the size and scope of the competitors that have come in. And Boise is no longer a secret. It's a market that has all the players from all around the world either here already or trying to get here. So I don't see anything shifting in terms of the direction. I see the industry going the same direction it has gone. Yeah, I guess that's the short answer to that question, is that I see it continuing in that direction.
Some of these companies out there, they just monetarily, they have advantages, tech advantages, the size. We have all these mergers, acquisitions, everything else. So how do brokerages, mid-level size brokerages like yourself, how do they compete and stand out to the agent? The agent is looking at all these shiny things. How does a brokerage of your size stand out?
You have to communicate what it is that you do well, and you have to understand that you can't be all things to all people. And hey, listen, agents are still out there, and they're still struggling, and they still need coaching and help and advice, and they still need partnership, and they still need all the services that we provide from a space and tools and tech and team and mastermind and all the things. You have to, in some ways, double down on the basics in terms of what you do and reaching as many of those people as you possibly can. But then you also have to frankly, adjust your commission models and adjust your P&L and be as efficient as you possibly can and grow. You cannot just stick your head in the sand and continue to do the exact same things and hope to get a different result. We all know that that's the definition of insanity. That's the one thing I would say that's changed. To boil all that down here locally, 15 years ago, if you had a brokerage that was, 50, 75 agents, you could make a living doing that. And that is no longer the case. In fact, now it's the case that if you don't have 200, 300 agents, it's really difficult to survive in this environment and to compete. If like I said, if you're trying to be a traditional brokerage model that is there to serve agents and the agent is your customer. Now, there's so many other, like going back to this conversation about brokerage models, like there's so many other models in the marketplace now. I mean, there's models that really are nothing but a team. They're just a glorified team, and they rely on the production of the team leader, who's also the brokerage owner, and whatever business that they're bringing in order to survive. And they're really not functioning as a traditional brokerage would function. And then there's some, like I said, that they make their money because they have a lending arm, and they give their brokerage services away for free because they're making all their money having their agents push business to their lending arm. So there's so many different models out there, that's for sure. But you do have to understand who you're there to serve, what your model is, and then articulate that clearly into the marketplace. And much like being an agent, you always have to be pitching, you always have to be selling, you always have to be having new conversations with new people in order to grow your company.
So, what advice, as the owner of a 200-person brokerage, what advice would you give a 20-person team? Someone says, I'm not going to be a broker in a big old brokerage. I have this 15, 20-person team. What advice would you give them?
My advice to them would be very cognizant of growth decisions. And what I mean by that is like grow intentionally. If you're going to grow for a reason. Don't fall into the trap that so many of us have fallen into. And I've done this before, and I think everybody in this industry has, where you grow just to grow. You grow just because that's what you're supposed to do. You grow just because you stare at the MLS sheets every day or every week or every month, and you're obsessed with competing, and you're obsessed with having more, getting more, selling more than the next guy down the street. And I think if you're a team that size, it's kind of an interesting size because you really are on the cusp of having to make some very different decisions about how you operate your team. And are you going to be somebody who is primarily the rainmaker and primarily a producer who is just surrounded by a giant support staff? Or are you going to step more into a role of an owner, and you're not going to produce as much because you're spending all of your time recruiting and training and coaching and hiring and doing HR and running a company? And I see a lot of people sort of bouncing back and forth between those two things. And I know this because I've done it at times, and kind of just being crappy at all of them instead of picking one and being great at it. And that's something that is easy to fall into in this business is you grow just for the sake of growth. And then one day you wake up and you look at your company or you look at your team and you're just like, man, I don't even like this. Like, what the hell am I doing? This isn't fun. It's not why I got into this business. I'm not particularly profitable. Maybe you are profitable, but you're miserable, So how much money do you want to make when you hate your life? Does that really make it worth it? Because I'm telling you, I've seen a lot of people make a lot of money and totally self-destruct.
Oh yeah,
because they were miserable.
Yeah, man, I can tell stories on that. I mean, so many times when I was coaching, these high level people would come to me and they say, "Hey, Derek, I'm good at what I do and I'm making a lot of money, but if I keep doing it, I'm either going to be divorced or have a heart attack or both." Right? So there's a lot to be said. And I love what you said. Someone will say, "Hey, I want to build this X level business." Why? Well, because she did.
Right.
I want to do 100 units a year. Why? Because he did or they did. It's like, I don't care about them.
Right.
What do you want? And then why do you want it?
Yeah.
And so many times they'll say, well, I want to build this X level of business. Why? Because that way I can hire somebody to replace me. Why do you want to replace yourself? Because I hate this business. Why are you beating your head against the wall? Because your goal is to stop doing what you're currently doing. Right? So it's I've seen it. I've heard it so many times. I'm here. They want to be up here, and they call this the messy middle for a reason. This is painful mentally, physically, emotionally, monetarily, spiritually. This is exhausting. So I've seen a lot of great, incredible 2-3 person businesses.
Yeah.
You want to go to here, great, but you got to get there fast. And why do you want to get there when things get hard? Which they will, right? It's not the willpower to get you through, it's the why power. What's your why to get to there when things get tough? Is this strong enough to get you there?
Yeah.
So, I see people, I want to do it. Why? Because they did. It's like, just quit worrying about everybody else. Do your thing for you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I've coached a number of agents who have made that transition that you're talking about, where they have a couple of people on their team. Maybe they're selling 20, 30 million a year. They want to sell 100 million a year. And the first questions that I always ask them is why do you want to do that? And not only why, but I say, like, you have to understand, like, how this is going to impact your day-to-day life. And I try to put them in that new reality. It's like, vision casting. And then we say, okay, let's put you in this vision that you say you want. And let's look at the day-to-day reality of that. Is that something that you're really going to be happy with? Because it might be all the things that you love about the business, you don't do anymore. You only do the stuff that you don't love about the business, and now you're miserable. And I can't remember where I heard this. Man, I'll think of it maybe in a minute. It was on a podcast or a book. But I was reading it or listening to it recently, and the author said, and he's actually done a lot of studies on this, on businesses and kind of when they grow, when they shrink. He's studied a lot of them that implode. And one of the things that he's found with a lot of the businesses that have failed is, like, the owner actually subconsciously a lot of times, like, self-sabotages them. Like, it's a lot of times it's subconscious. It's not even conscious. Sometimes it is conscious, but there's this dynamic in business where, like, the founder or the owner operates miserable, and they tank the business a lot of times unintentionally. They're not even thinking that they're going to do it, but they do it because they're miserable. Like, when you're not content, of course you're going to have bad days. Like, we all have bad days. You have bad days, you have good days. But if you don't enjoy some aspect of what you're doing, and if you can't find meaning and contentment in some aspect of it, you're going to fail. And a lot of times you'll fail because you'll literally self-sabotage it. And you and I have both seen that many times in real estate. Yeah,
I hear you. I love that. Lots of good stuff on what a brokerage is and how to grow it. I want to kind of circle back a little bit because I just think this is very interesting about Amherst Madison. So, you're a high-level collegiate athlete, and then you're a coach, the great Chris Peterson. He says, you know what? I want you guys to get out there and get involved in the community. And so you're busy with school. You're busy being a high-level athlete, and now you're asked to help, engage out in the community and stuff. And that turned out to have a piece of this company called Amherst Madison. I think it's a story that needs to get out there, and I'd love for you to just tell me a little bit more about that journey.
Derek, my journey with community started a long time before Boise State. It really started with the way that I was raised. And I was raised to do things because they were the right thing. I was raised to do the right thing even when nobody's looking. For example, one of the things that I always remember about my childhood is we lived on this little country road out in Eagle before Eagle was what it is today. And one of the things my mom and I used to go on these walks and pick up trash on the side of the road, because a lot of people don't realize just walking down a country road, there's a lot of trash in the ditches and barrel pits along the sides of these roads.
Yeah.
It's an amazing amount, actually. It's kind of disturbing, but I don't know. That's a story for another day. So we used to walk along and just grab a plastic sack, or we'd bring one with us and just pick up trash. And I remember asking her one time, hey, why do we do this? And I was really young when we would do this. I mean, 9, 10 years old, maybe younger. And she just said to me, well, if we don't, who will? And it's this idea of taking ownership and responsibility for not just yourself, but for your community and for the space around you and for your street and for your town and ultimately, of course, for your country. But if you don't do the right thing, who will do it? If you don't have, you've heard that saying, like, if you don't have time to do it right, when you have time to do it over. And it's a little bit of a different idea, but it hits along the same lines. And so anyways, my mom always had a spirit. She was a very, very, very giving person, very thoughtful, and showed me, and my father did as well. My dad was somebody that we took a lot of people in, and it was sort of weird at times. Like, there was people that would be struggling in the church, or people that were struggling in the community that they knew, and there was times where we had strangers living with us because they didn't have a place to stay, and kind of an odd situation actually when you look back on it. And my parents just always were very open about their home, and they took care of people. They took people in, and so they set an example for me of doing that. And I always had an understanding of why that was important, because I saw the impact it had on other people's life around me growing up. I saw the impact that it had for somebody who was struggling to know that somebody cared enough to open their home.
Yeah.
Is a huge thing. And if you can be there for somebody at a point in their life where they're struggling, it can change their trajectory forever. And the service to community was something that they always imprinted on me. So yeah, that was a part of my life long before college. And it just continued. I remember being a high school athlete, and there'd be opportunities to go to the elementary school and read to kids. And, I'd do that. And I was a team captain, from a small age all the way up to when I was at Boise State University. I had that role. And that was always one of the reasons I like doing that, is because you're kind of a spokesperson and you get a chance to go out to the community and do things like that. So for my time at Boise State, though, Boise State Athletics has a really good relationship with Make-A-Wish Idaho, and they still do to this day. And they do an event called Serving Up Wishes, where the Boise State student athletes will volunteer to serve as hosts and hostesses and waiters at this really fancy dinner auction. Mm-hmm. And it's an auction. It's a fundraiser for Make-A-Wish Idaho, but it's sort of put on by the Boise State Athletics. I guess I shouldn't say put on, but it's supported by the athletic department. And when I was a freshman at Boise State, some upperclassmen grabbed me and said, hey, we need volunteers, or we need help, and you're going to go help us with this thing. Mm-hmm. So I was voluntold. Yeah.
Help serve butter.
Yeah. So as a freshman, I didn't really know what was going on. I'd only been at the university for a few months. It was during football season, actually, fall semester. So I go over with them, and, I remember, I'm like giving ladies neck massages and serving food, and like they have you do, tricks or talents to try to earn more wish bucks and entertain the crowd. And it was something that was way outside my comfort zone, but it was a lot of fun. And then, near the end of the evening, and then the program kind of starts, and these Wish families from Make-A-Wish are standing up and telling their stories. And man, I just remember being knocked on my ass in terms of life-changing to hear some of these stories and think about, man, I thought that I had it rough, and I had challenges as a kid, and my family went through challenges, and sickness and my dad going bankrupt when I was really young, and we lost everything we had. And I grew up with a lot of struggle, but my struggle was nothing compared to what these families were going through, either with sick kids and in some cases kids that didn't make it. And I just remember like that night, this spirit of community and service pointed me in that direction. And, and I think, God was a part of that as well, just pointing me in a direction of and where my heart was to serve. And so I kept coming back to that event every year, and then volunteered, for Make-A-Wish after that. Did the polar bear plunge many times, January 1st up at Lucky Peak, which is a Make-A-Wish Idaho thing, and did the serving up thing, volunteered in other ways, later became a board member for Make-A-Wish Idaho. So I was and still am involved in some ways in that organization for 20 years. Along that path, and I served actually in some other nonprofits, other boards, other wish grantor roles. There was a sort of local Northwest United States version of Make-A-Wish called Wishing Star, and I had some really impactful experiences helping grant a wish for a family through that. But one of the families that I met, they had a girl and a boy that were cancer survivors, and their names were Amherst and Madison, and that is where actually I got the name for the brokerage. And how that came about is like most things, I couldn't have planned it. I couldn't have made it up. I couldn't have charted it. I was telling this story actually one night, 13 years ago, to some agents that were around the beginning of this thing, and because I couldn't decide what to call the company. I'm not great at naming things, I don't think, but I struggle with overthinking. I mentioned that, with overthinking this process of what to call it. And I just told this story, and the role that community played in what we did. And that was something I stressed from the beginning was, we're going to be a brokerage that is involved in our community. We're going to be a brokerage that cares about our community. We're going to be a brokerage that gives time, treasure, and sacrifices for the community. And we always have been, and we always will be. But that's where the name of the company came from is, well, why not call it that? And if nothing else, it's just a great reminder to be thankful for what you have.
Yeah, I love that. I've always loved that story. I mean, you could have named it Schlekeway Enterprises, but nobody could spell it anyway.
Yeah.
So to name it after something, to know it's this is all about something greater than yourself. So, I mean, that tells about what the name meant to you back then. When people hear the word Amherst Madison today, what do you want them to think?
Well, I do want them to think about community. And we were talking earlier about these large, brokerage changes and different models that have come in and all these different ways to make a buck. And I think it is forgotten easily the role that community plays. And I want first and foremost for us to think about Amherst Madison as a local Idaho company, because that's what it is, with deep relationships in the community and partnerships in the community and time and treasure given to the community. And I want people to understand who we are from that standpoint and understand that we are committed to Idaho. We're committed to Boise, to Eagle, to the Treasure Valley, to McCall, to all the markets that we serve around the state. That's first and foremost. And then second is quality and professionalism. And quality and professionalism in terms of how we treat people, how we conduct ourselves, how we do business, and how we market property and how we market ourselves as practitioners and as brokers and agents. So the quality and the professionalism and the dedication to service, and to community. Service is interesting in real estate because it's sales. Like that's what we do. Like we sell real estate, and make no mistake about that. Like anybody that tells an agent that they're not in sales is leading that agent to destruction and leading them out of the industry, because that's what we do is we sell. But we also serve, and it's service-based sales. It's like, what are you selling? Well, you're selling a service. We don't sell widgets. We sell real estate, but we sell that real estate through our services. So I pause on that concept of service because it ties into all these things. It ties into clients, community, everything that we do has to come back to this spirit of serving. And agents that stay in that spirit and understand that importance and understand that they're there to solve problems for other people, they're not there to glorify themselves, those agents have lasting power. And those agents, they make a ton of money, but that's not their focus. Their focus is solving problems and serving others. And I think we just have a great opportunity to do that in this business, and I've always seen that.
Let's go back to the entrepreneurs. The entrepreneurs out there, they get excited. They have a plan. They get excited, and entrepreneurs, we're great starters. Mm-hmm. But sometimes we're not strong finishers.
Yeah.
So once again, we all have good and bad days. But what advice would you give an entrepreneur of any industry? That entrepreneur, when things get a little tough, what advice would you give them so they can finish strong and live the dream that they want to live through this business?
Well, the first thing I would say to them is don't isolate. Talk to somebody. Talk to a mentor. If you don't have a mentor, try to find one. And it doesn't always have to be somebody in your industry. It can be somebody who's in a different industry. And some of my best advice I've ever gotten was from people that were not in real estate. They were in different industries. But don't sit there by yourself, kind of beating your head against the wall, trying to figure it out. Pick up the phone and call somebody and have a conversation about what you're going through and say, what do you think about this? How would you attack this problem? You're not alone unless you build those walls up yourself and isolate yourself. You don't have to be alone. I stress that because that's the path that I think leads to horrible decisions or just to discouragement and quitting, is when people are making all these decisions in a vacuum. And so the first thing I would say is talk to a mentor. The second thing is you have to understand that this too shall pass. There's going to be good seasons. There's going to be profitable seasons. And guess what? There's going to be skinny seasons, and there's going to be challenging seasons. And there's going to be seasons that, whether it's because of the market forces that you don't control, whether it's because of competitive forces that you don't control, but usually, and this is the part that no one wants to hear, because of your own action or inaction that you do control, hey, you're going to experience pain. And all you can do is get the lessons out of it that you can get and keep putting one foot in front of the other and don't quit and just stay in the game. You just got to stay present, stay in the game, do the next best thing, and try not to get overwhelmed at the complexity or enormity of the problem that is staring you in the face. And listen, I know that that's easier said than done. I've been there myself, where it just seemed like there was no way out. There was too many things going wrong. I wasn't going to be able to figure it out. I wasn't going to be able to last. It was too painful. It was too hard. It's not supposed to be this hard is something that we all often tell ourselves, which is such a crock of shit, because what do we know about what it is supposed to be or isn't supposed to be? And if there's one thing that I hate about our world today, it's that it's so whitewashed. We see the end product. We see the end result. We're constantly inundated with the end result, and we never get to see all the work that went into it, all the struggle that went into it, all the failure that went into it. And that really sets us up for disappointment. It sets us up for struggle because, Derek, you're comparing your journey to people and their journey, but you don't really see their journey. All you see is the end result, or all you see is the positives, or all you see is the version that they're willing to put out there. Mm-hmm. And you yourself know how hard your life is. And so you're constantly in this spirit of like, what's wrong with me because my shit is so hard and everybody else's isn't. And that is a dangerous, dangerous mindset. If you're in that mindset and you're listening to this, you need to wake up and get out of whatever circle you're in and stop looking at social media and go talk to real business owners and real founders or real people in real estate that have been through it, that have experience. You need to get out of your own head, get off social media, get off media in general, and go have conversations with real people who've been through the shit. Because you have to, you got to figure it out real quick that it's supposed to be hard. It's not supposed to be easy. And just because it's hard doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. it's good. It's how it's supposed to be. It means that you're doing something worth doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so many times we compare ourselves to everybody else's highlight reels, right?
Right.
So don't compare your behind the scenes with everybody else's highlight reels.
Yeah.
That was one of the biggest benefits I got as a coach, because we all have our own voices and monkeys and all the stuff going on in our head.
Mm-hmm.
I remember growing up as a kid, I thought I was the only one who had voices in their head. So I thought it was crazy. Until I found out, I thought if people could hear what was going on in my head, they'd run away from me. But it wasn't until I got into coaching where in coaching you get to see behind the curtain. And people are saying, this is going on in my life with my family, with my health, with my finances, with my cousin. And you get to see behind the curtain what's really going on.
Yeah.
And especially in social media, we just wake up, roll over, look at the phone. We start comparing ourselves to everybody else, and we all know half of it's lies. So you got to get real, and you got to. We talk about environment. The number one thing is the environment. You got to get around other people that are being real with you. You want to make real decisions. You need real information.
That's right.
Hang around with the real people.
Yeah. No, that's right. And one of the things I love about doing a podcast and podcast I'm doing, because it's sort of something I was already doing anyways in my professional life. As you know, if you're coaching people, if you're consulting people, I mean, every day is a podcast in a lot of ways. But I want to bring to light, of all the things I want to shine a light on when I do this show, it's that success is supposed to be difficult. It's designed that way. The difficulty itself is what makes it worth doing. Nothing worth having comes easy. What gives it its value is the difficulty. And so I just find it so backwards in our world, because it's like the number one thing that we run away from, which is this uncertainty and the struggle, that very thing is what makes something worthwhile doing. And this goes from relationships and marriages to business to health and wellness and losing weight or gaining weight and muscle and fitness. I mean, it's like, it's pervasive. And I think I'm infinitely curious about that issue. And I'm infinitely curious when I listen to successful people describe their stories, it's just like, man, one like gut punch after the next, after the next, after the next. And the through line, the commonality with all of these people is that they never quit. And they just kept, maybe they switched industries, maybe they switched professions, maybe they got a whole new team, maybe they started all over again, maybe they doubled down on everything that they already were doing, but one way or the other, they figured out how to be successful and then how to reach the other side of it. And it's like, once you see it, Derek, like you can't unsee it. Like once you see through the lie, once you see the truth that, like everything's hard and like it's supposed to be that way. And the whole point of this is to get through that. Like once I want people to see that, I'm so passionate about trying to get people to see that, because I know that like once they see it, they can never unsee it. And now they're just making a decision. Now it's like after that, if they know what it's all about and they know it's supposed to be hard and they've already broken through that before and achieved success, if they quit after that, I mean, they're just making a decision. They're literally choosing to fail.
Yeah.
But I want people to at least taste it, that victory of like pushing through it once, so that they can see that that's the whole point.
Wow, I love that. And that's what I'm looking forward to with the rest of your podcasts, your speaking engagements, all the message that you're getting out there of, it's not just a trophy, it's what's behind the curtain, and it's that, the journey getting there that we don't talk about. We just look at the awards and the numbers and the posts and stuff nowadays. We don't know what that journey looks like. And that's, from my understanding, that's what you're going to get out there, and that's what I'm excited about you doing. Yeah,
and the sum total of all these interactions along the way is what you leave behind. Right. I mean, we talk about this thing, legacy. I think to men especially, this thing of legacy is something that we talk about a lot. We think about it. I know we think about it a hell of a lot. I know people may or may not realize that men think about that. I think on almost a daily basis, a lot of us do, is what am I leaving behind, or what's my legacy going to be? And in my opinion, like the legacy is how you treat people. The legacy is the memories that you leave behind with your kids, your family, your coworkers, the people that you've partnered up with. It's very rarely about even the bricks and sticks of the things that you build physically. It sure as hell does nothing to do with money and finances. It really is from what I've seen, the people that are still talked about after they're gone it's because they made an impact in the lives of their fellow man. Like, period, end of story. Those are the people that are still talked about. So if that's something you care about, if that's something you want, if you want to have a legacy of some kind, which I think a lot of us do, then you better be investing in other people, and you better be investing in those conversations and those interactions with your fellow man and your neighbor and your community, because that's all that there is that's left at the end of the day.
Yep. I love that. So once again, thank you for the opportunity to interview you. We've had 100 conversations, but I picked up some new stuff about you I didn't know about before, and that's what I think is important, everybody to get to know who, Nick Schlekeway and Amherst Madison really is. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Appreciate the time.